maximize every opportunity so that you can become legendary.
What adjustments can you make right now to make yourself 1%
Your
better?
only goal is to be the best version of you.
Cal, welcome to Becoming Legendary, man. Thanks for coming on. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me, guys. This has been a long time coming, I feel like.
And it perfectly manifested when it was supposed to.
That's right.
So I always like this little opportunity at the front here. And some people hate this opportunity. So if you hate it, feel free to respond in whatever way feels nice. But can I turn it over to you for the opportunity to just tell anyone in our audience who isn't familiar with you who you are and what makes you?
Okay, yeah, I'll take that one. I'm 49 years old, and I spent the better part of my career post-college as a trader in Chicago. I was there until I was 41 and decided to leave the business. My wife and I and our family moved down to Austin, Texas, and I have been there since then. So it's been about 8 years. And in the period of leaving trading, I had this kind of awakening kind of in the last maybe couple years that I wasn't really meant to do that anymore. And I had gotten into health and fitness, in wellness, nutrition, life coaching, the kind of the whole bundle, and thought I was going to be a fitness coach and kind of pursued that right. Literally, I retired from trading on a Friday, and Monday, I just, I kind of hit it hard and was continuing to do some of my certifications. I started to coach people and really enjoyed that. But what I found was it wasn't what I was really meant to do. It was kind of a stepping stone into maybe a kind of a bigger vision for what was really aligned for me. And that was like an important lesson for me, because I had a lot of judgment around leaving the actual coaching part, because I told people that's what I was going to do when I left trading. But what I've come to understand, particularly in the past 8 years, is all these stages are just kind of getting me to my deeper purpose. And if you fellas are familiar with The Way of the Superior Man by David Deida, he speaks about that. And I didn't quite understand it until quite recently. And I read that book. Actually, that was the book that really awakened in me that it was time to leave trading, which was hard. It was 18 years of the same company. I was there in the very beginning, and we had grown it to a decent size. And these men were all my brothers. Yeah. And I grew up playing hockey and always competed in sports. And I loved the locker room. I loved the camaraderie. I loved that as a goalie on the hockey team, I was responsible, for keeping the puck out of the net.
Sure.
We had to rely on one another. And that's what I loved about trading. It fit right in. Like, I was accountable for my own piece, but we were also trading for one another. And so leaving that into coaching became a little bit of a solitary, I guess, progression for me. And I really missed that brotherhood. And what's happened, I would say, in particular in the last year or so in Austin, is I've come into contact with a community that goes very deep into brotherhood, sisterhood, and showing up for one another. And through that, I'm still doing, I would say, a little bit of coaching. That's on hold right now. I've run a few online retreats over the past year. And so that's been really fun for me. And as you guys both know, I have my podcast, and the podcast is really, it was something that I've been learning so much, and I'd been sharing it with my inner circle, and honestly became frustrated. Like, I need more people to know about the things that I'm learning, the people that I'm being introduced to, their stories that they're sharing with me. And so I just started the podcast. Like, why don't I do this? For really, that was the main purpose. And then what I found was, in doing a podcast, I became a much better listener. As you both know, like, being a host, you really need to be present for what's going on. And so I became a better listener. And then I just started to have people on that I was super curious about what they were doing. And in that, I started to understand in maybe my former life, how I really wasn't that curious, how things were black and white for me. And through this journey of being open-minded, I've learned so much. And I realized that when we believe we have the answers, when it's one way or the other, there's no room for learning or growth. And
Sure.
I really try to hold on to that. In fact, we were at a dinner last night with friends, and the invitation was to go around and to give your pit for the day, your peak for the day, and what maybe your family motto is. And for me, what I said, and it really wasn't the family motto, it was more my kind of personal motto is be curious. Have your own experience and let that inform what is true for you. Because we're taught a lot through school, through our parents, through the I wouldn't say elders in the community, it's more like the olders in the community, right? That this is how you should be. This is how you should act as a kid. This is how you should act as a 20-something-year-old. This is how you should. And a lot of it misses the mark, and it's not really true. So I guess that's in a nutshell, that's kind of the journey I've been on most recently.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
that's a really beautiful summary. I think people have a very good understanding of the foundation of Cal at this point. To dig just a little bit deeper into that same kind of topic area, if you were thinking of a characteristic that has defined you, if there was one thing that has really been like the pillar in your life, what is that?
Instinct, intuition. And it's what made me, a really successful trader. Sure, there's math involved when you're on I was on the trading floor. It's hectic. There's a lot going on, and you don't have time to sort things out. You really have to trust your gut. And it's something I did really well, but in other parts of my life, I didn't necessarily rely on it as much. And it's something that I started to understand in the last couple of years, is that's really my guiding light, is to just trust my intuition, to trust what feels right, to literally tune into my body with whatever the circumstances are. Do you want to go out to dinner with so-and-so? It's like, I don't really want to. So no, and I'll say it graciously,
yes,
but I won't do it out of this sense of having to do it. And it's really helped me get clear on what is right for me, what is alive for me. And I try to stay tuned into that. Like, is this alive for me? Yes. Okay, then I'm going to do it. And if it's not, then I won't do it. And that is something that I've tried to share with others too. Like, it's just like, what do you want? What feels right for you? Not what, again, back to the shoulds. I think a lot of us can get caught up in the shoulds, and we end up going down this road of doing things that other people think we should do, or we're even making assumptions about what other people, it gets so convoluted. And then you're trying to keep together, like, what's the right thing to do? Because you're all up in your head versus being in your body and just tuning in. And I think as men, it's a little bit more challenging. And then you layer in stuff like working out. It's something that I've done for a number of years. And it wasn't, again, it's a big awakening over the last couple of years where I stopped doing what I thought I should do, chasing PRs, lifting heavy, all these things that were actually beating my health into the ground. And what I did was I started to do things that were fun. And as you both have seen, on Wednesdays in Austin, I hosted a workout starting back in November. While I'm up here in Idaho, it's on pause, but it started out with 7 or 8 guys. And by the time I left in June, we were in the 40s, and we'd been in the 40s for the past, 5 or 6 weeks. And how did that start? It started because one of the guys in a men's group said, Cal, you have a great gym. Can we work out there this Wednesday? We've been working out in Stefano's garage. It'd be cool to be in a bigger space. Like, absolutely. That would be fun. I love these guys. let's go.
Let's go.
And then it just grew to this thing that became way, way more than a workout. But it's because I said yes to the fun, to the joy of what it was presenting. I don't even care what we do for, different movements within the workout, and everybody gets to choose how hard they want to go. And if they need a bit of a recovery day, they get to do that. There's no ego check. And so saying yes to what is, going to bring me joy, was going to potentially bring me joy, what feels right, has really made my life a lot easier.
It's incredible. I want to rewind a couple moments. First of all, if I ever do make it down to Austin, I want to jump in that workout group. That's super rad, man. Like, and it's just like being curious. I love that the ego's checked at the door. I love that people can go as hard or as soft as they want to go. And it's all about that camaraderie, that brothership, which is really, really important. So I spent the beginning of my life on skates as well. I played competitive hockey in Detroit, Michigan. I grew up there for about 10 years and played travel hockey. We traveled all over sort of the Midwest. So I'm 41 now. You're a little older than me, but maybe we would have crossed paths somewhere along the line with that hockey game. So we'll have to get on skates one day, man. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to talk a little bit more about the body piece. I think that's really important for our listeners and techniques or tools that you use to drop into your body, because I think what you were alluding to is that word curious, right? So your head is like, for me at least, my head is always the yeller of the group, right? It's always the most vocal. And when I tap into my heart, it's almost as if there's a whisper occurring, right? So I like to listen to the whisper from my heart instead of the yelling from my brain. And tapping into the body is one way to do that, or the way to do that. So can you elaborate just a little bit, Cal, on tools and techniques for the listeners that could help them drop into their body?
Yeah, and I think that's a great distinction you made, that the mind gets very loud and it's chattering and it can really distract you. And that body is really a whisper. And so how do we shut off the mind so that we can tune in? And there's a few simple techniques. It's just to take a couple of deep breaths and try to drop into the body and feel and ask yourself the question, what is the invitation that you've been presented with, and how does it feel? Does it feel expansive when you kind of ask yourself that question, or do you constrict? And it can be really as simple as that, and if people want to go deeper, one of the tools I love to use is the sacred tobacco snuff from the Amazon called Hape.
Yes.
And it's something that you're familiar with it, right?
I just tried the first time like 2 days ago. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And so that whatever's going on in your head prior to the application of the tobacco snuff into your nostrils, it's gone.
It's gone.
And it really, for me, it's like the Etch-a-Sketch for the mind, and it clears everything. And then I just drop into a meditation. And it doesn't have to, meditation gets so bastardized for people. It doesn't have to be anything more than just being quiet and letting whatever comes to your mind, appear and go with it. And for me, that's what it is. I shut the mind off, and then the important things that are laying underneath all the chatter start to appear. Maybe it's someone I need to reach out to. Maybe it's something that happened with my wife the day before or even the week before. And these things start to emerge, and I get to just sit with them. And then I get to feel into, how do I want to move forward with each of these things? And some days there's a number of things that are coming up, and then other days it's just like one thing that I'm sitting with. And it could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, but it doesn't have to be this long extended period. And if that feels like a long period of time, I can assure you that when you do Hape, you're going to be laying down for at least 10 minutes, because it kind of knocks your socks off. So you're going to want to rest. Yeah. And sometimes the mind goes completely blank, like, what the fuck just happened? The eyes water. Every now and then I get a good dose like that. But that's something that's really helped me. And doing something as simple as going for a walk without headphones on, just being outside in nature, and you don't have to be walking through a forest. You could be walking along the road, and just let your mind go. And it's okay if your things for work are coming up with your partner, like let those things come in, let them go by, and then eventually you kind of sort through that stuff, and these bigger things for me start to appear, and I get to work with those. So those are some of the things I like to do to quiet the mind. I'm not great. Some people do it as first thing in the morning. They wake up, they lay in bed. For me, it's like I wake up and there's like almost like a little bit of an antsiness. Like I wanna get my feet on the ground and I want to start the day. And it doesn't mean that I'm gonna go and bang out a bunch of work and get engaged in whatever. For me, it's really to go sit with Hape and to have that practice, and just to let my morning unfold however it wants to on that particular day. But for some people, it can be just laying in bed, as soon as they wake up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that internal dialogue that you experience first, second, or third person?
Good question, man.
I'd say it's more first person. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure though. That was a really good question. Why? How about this? Why do you ask? What is it for you?
So my internal dialogue is very unique. It's very minimal. It's 99.999999% positive, and it's exclusively in first person. But this has kind of led me down a path of being very curious about what goes on within other people's brains, because it's something that we don't have any awareness of. And the way that other brains are operating around us is a very, very foreign thing to us, because we just expect. I mean, I literally did not know people had this like negative chatter going on in their brain until I was 37 years old.
Damn!
Which is a weird thing. It's a very weird thing. It's a very primitive. My brain is very primitive. It's very simple. And it's the only brain I know. So I find it fascinating. What I've learned is that most people are experiencing a blend of first, second, and third. Most people have kind of given themselves a nickname that they speak to themselves with internally. And then they also refer to themselves by their name in the third person. And I think there's some really interesting, if you start to pull those apart, how you speak to yourself in each one of those person tenses is probably pretty different, and probably pretty fascinating threads to follow down, or rivers to follow down, depending on how quickly things are coming at you.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I'm probably more third person. Yeah.
Yeah, that I think, so I think Brian and I were playing some disc golf. I think it was you, Brian. Might not have been, but somebody and I were playing disc golf, and they were talking about how they use their name. And I did it just to like see what it felt like. I was like, oh, Patrick, I can't believe it. And I was like, wow, that is a weird thing right there.
Yeah.
Every now and then I'll throw the Callahan. It's like, come on, man, or you got this, man. Like, I mean, that's third person, right?
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
Absolutely.
Get your shit together.
Come on, Cal. Yeah. Come on, Brian. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So when you're talking about this ability to kind of cultivate the important things in your life, and this kind of rewind back one, but kind of on the same train. Do you think that that ability to kind of identify with instinct or awareness, or this internal beacon that kind of works for you, do you think that's something that other humans can cultivate within themselves?
100%. It's there. And they probably already do on some level, but it takes intention, and it takes these positive reps when you do it and you trust it. And again, you got to step away from the outcome. I think a lot of our decision making is based on a potential future outcome that we think we want to land on. But when we stay in the present and we tune into right now, how do I feel about, fill in the blank, and then you either move towards it or you move away from it, this path starts to emerge about, kind of your greater purpose, your truer self. And then that just becomes easier and easier because you're in this flow. You're starting to advocate for yourself, the things that you want, not the things that are being maybe projected upon you and what, the road you should be choosing. And I think a lot of us are subjected to that.
Yeah.
And it does take courage to go against what you think other people want, because we are conditioned, unfortunately, our entire life to go down these paths. And again, I often bring up school as an example. School's not about your own curiosity and your creativity and bringing out the best in you. It's about teaching you or lecturing you about these things that are important in facts and memorizing, regurgitating. And the system, in my opinion, is a bit of a disaster, but it's the one we have. And, what I've really been super conscious about with my kids, my kids are 8, my oldest just graduated from high school, and my 2 younger ones are 15 and 14. So they're still in school. It's very much, I just try to have a proper lens on it. How do these kids learn? And what can I do to support them so that when this system is not supporting them, that they're still okay. They still have that self-esteem, because it's just not teaching to the way that they that makes them feel alive. They don't have ADHD. They're fucking bored.
Yeah.
This is boring stuff.
Yeah.
And now when you let them know that it's okay, like still put in the effort, because through with that effort, you create some resiliency. There's going to be shit you do in life that you don't love. Hopefully as you become more aware, you start to do less of those things. But, that's part of what we're here to do, is to kind of grind through some of these lower order things. As much as I try to choose the things that keep me alive, there are things I do that I don't love doing. And so I think school can be, just giving my kids some, enough rope that they can play, and not, judging their grades, or just letting them know, like, this is just one part of your experience here. It's one. And I think a lot of parents, in my opinion, miss the mark and think they put so many eggs in that school basket. Where are they going to go to college? What's going to happen? Like, it doesn't need to be that way, because while getting into a great college can open up a particular network for you, I know that where I am today, I went to an amazing college. It has nothing to do with that. Yeah. I didn't become a trader because I got into a great school. It just happened to be the guy who hired me came to my school to interview people because he knew someone at the school. It was total happenstance. So I think just like, kind of taking the air out of that ball a little bit for people, and letting kids, it's hard enough today for these kids. We had it much different, and so any way I can de-stress my kids' lives and really encourage them in the areas that I feel are important based upon how they show up in the world. Yeah. I think that's part of my, it's really one of my most important roles as a parent.
It's your kids are lucky, man. They're blessed to have you as a father, first and foremost, I think, because as that shirt says, you unlearn, right? That says Wednesday. Sorry, but
but you got it. You're on brand.
The reversed letters there. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, as you started to tear back the different layers of your life, right? And I was listening to your podcast last night with Paul Check, and he was talking about, you mentioned it briefly there, the sacrifices that are made once you start to unlearn some of these things, right? Some of these practices and procedures that have just been sort of implemented into us that we have had no choice over. So the question really becomes, this is going to tie back to your kids a little bit. Like, so as you've started to unlearn the programs, the stories that don't serve you anymore. Has that been a topic of conversation around your children as well? Or is that because it seems like from my perspective, you lead in such a way, not only men, children, your family, in a way that is very attractive, right? There's a palpable energy there. So I would assume your kids follow along with some of that stuff.
And by the way, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I would say that with my kids, what I do is try to be very accepting. And so they're familiar with my work on some level. They know how I show up for them, certainly, but for my friends. And we have conversations where I try to give them a perspective, validate where they're, the important thing I feel like is to validate how they're feeling. And then just to open up, their aperture to, like, there are other ways that we could see these things based on our own experiences, but also not try to correct them, because then I'm doing the same thing that, I'm kind of rallying against here. Yeah. So validate how they feel, and then really just try to show up in a way that is very open-hearted and open-minded, and let them figure out for themselves where they want to sit along that. And really just try to be like really judgment-free. Look, when my kids fucking up and, time after time missing curfew, like, I'll bring the hammer down and say, okay, like, I've given you enough here. Like, let's go. There is a consequence, but I'm not a big consequence guy. Yeah. I want them to have agency over the decisions they make. If something's going on at school, I don't want to be the one to drop the hammer. I want the school to take care of that. And fortunately for us, our kids go to a school that is very supportive and it's very progressive. It's the best one we could find for the way that we, want to raise our kids. And I think it's through my actions and then through some conversations, cultivating some of those conversations, but also understanding where they're at. They're 14, they're 15. Maybe they don't want to talk about it right now. Like, I try to be really attuned to when they're ready to receive. And I don't always get that right. And when I'm feeling resistance, sometimes it takes the third month. I'm like, I gotta just drop this one. Just a little pattern interrupt for people. Sure. Because when we all start doing the same thing, we get in that echo chamber. It's a disaster. Yeah. Even for the good stuff, like, you need people who are going to push you in your beliefs and your ideas. Yeah. And that's what I'm so grateful for the people that I'm surrounded by in Austin. Yeah. Sure, we share a lot of common ideas and thoughts around the state of the world and how we want to be, but there's also enough courage amongst that group and enough respect that we will question each other. And so that's another thing I try to share with my kids. Like, look, I had, this was amazing. Maybe 6 weeks ago, before we came up to Idaho, I had 8 or 9 of my buddies over. We had some cigars and we had a little bourbon and we were hanging out. And my 2 boys, my 18-year-old and my 15-year-old, hung out with us, and which happens often. Whenever I have friends over, my boys, my daughter too, she's just not as called to it. They're always welcome to hang. I don't care what we talk about. I'm going to talk about it on my podcast. If we're talking about psychedelics or we're talking about sex, whatever, their information's out there. I want them to hear about it from me and my circle. I feel like there's a lot of intention there. There's been a lot of work, a lot of personal experience. And so anyway, my boys sat with us. It was probably 3.5, 4 hours one night. And they got to see guys disagree on some things. And they got to see, a couple of guys were a little bit charged, I would say. Yeah. And the one who was being questioned had such a beautiful energy around it and had no triggering about something that could have been received as personal, even though it wasn't. And my boys got to witness that. That's rather than me telling them this is how you're supposed to be and you're supposed to have they got to see these men hold space for one another, and it was beautiful. So that just exposing them to, like, my kids are always welcome. They're always welcome. And they, fortunately, they take me up on that more often than not. And so I love that.
I think you mentioned a couple things there. Well, yeah, definitely did. And the word, giving permission, right? Giving permission is something I've taught yoga for a number of years now, and that's one of my main callings and one of my main gifts, if you call it that. And I always like to give my students permission, right? If they need to make an audible exhale, make some noise, right? If you need to scream. I mean, it's all welcome here, but you first have to give yourself permission to feel, permission to be present with your body, right? So, like, I think that's very admirable what you're doing with your children, man. That's super rad. It's something that my father, I grew up playing a lot of golf with my dad, and on the golf course, I got to learn about how men talk to men, how they talked about business, how they talked about their partners, how they talked about life, and you can go on and on down that rabbit hole. And what I most learned from those opportunities was the simple fact that we're all human beings having different experiences, but within the realm of this mystery that we live in. Right. So it's like, it's breaking down the layers of the societal influences, the stories of the mind, and just breaking it down to like nuts and bolts, a human being, breathing air, drinking water, eating food. I think that helps to give permission for your children to feel the way that they feel, to do what they do, to think how they think, and not be judged or commented about. I think that's really good.
And I think that's important too. And I play a lot of golf up here, and my kids, mostly my 18-year-old gets to experience some of that. I mean, he likes to play with his buddies probably more than the older guys, but there's a lot that happens, as you know, within that dynamic, and they pick up on all of it, and they pick up on how you respond or don't respond within things that may be offensive or may feel like they cross the line, or someone's talking about their partner in a way it's like, like, fuck, I don't talk about your mom like that, but exactly. I also don't try to, like, I want them to have their own these men, right? Like, they can have their own experience, and it's not for me to judge that, but I also don't need to validate that that's the way I think you should talk about other people. And so it's again, these are all great opportunities to let, in this particular case, my kids see the world. And I think parents just try to shelter their kids from whatever it is. From talking about, my 15-year-old's been super curious about psychedelics. He came to me and asked me about it. He trusted me with that. He trusted me that he could share that with me. And I think a lot of parents would have a really hard time with it. And I think what you're doing is your kid is coming to you, and they're curious, and where do you want them to get their information from? How do you want to show up for them? When the shit really hits the fan, I want to be the first phone call. And that only happens by building trust and letting him know that I can handle anything you have for me, whatever it is. I think you're too young for it, but I can help give you information. Like, let's learn about this together. And really, again, it's just, these kids are their own individual souls. They're having their own experience, as you said, and it's important that we allow that for them and allow those boundaries to be expanded. And sometimes for me, I expand them a little bit too far, and then I realize that after something happens, like, okay, I got to reel it in a little bit. It's okay. Like, I'm learning too, but I would rather give them more room to play and experience within, kind of my space, versus feeling like they have to go hide and go do it somewhere else. And then there becomes all this shame around it. It becomes a place that I don't really want to go with them. I want them to feel completely accepted for anything that's coming up for them. It's all valid. We've all had our own version of all these experiences. And I think a lot of us as parents want to forget about our childhood, our curiosity, and the shit we did that we got away with and survived.
Yeah.
Like it's part of the journey.
It's part of it. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I got another question for you. And this is
let's hear it.
Yeah, this is going to be, so you've worked, well, I want to give you this first, man. I appreciate you so much, and because I've worked on a word specifically called vulnerable, being vulnerable, and that's what's really attracted to me to your work is the vulnerability piece, man. With the sharing about your family, with your wife, with all the things going on around that. It's given me permission to investigate a deeper exploration with my partner, with my wife. So I just want to thank you, like from the bottom of my heart, for that. We've listened to the podcast you and your wife did, and it's man, like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It's so powerful because it gives an insight into another human being's mind, another human being's relationship, and you can pull, and we've pulled, and we've found parallels, we found differences, and we found things that we can help build us up. We've even reached out to a woman by the name of Anahata for a ceremony that you've worked with. Yeah,
I love her.
So we're really like, you're guiding more people than I think you really know, and so I think that's really, really amazing. And I think maybe that comes from some of the people that you've worked with before in the past. And leads me into the question. Like, so on your podcast, you had, I'm just going to read the list here because I don't want to miss any. Parangi, Aubrey Marcus, Paul Check, Preston Smiles, Adam Rowe, Corey Allen, Kyle Kingsbury. The list goes on and on. So what's the overarching theme that you've discovered with working with such powerful teachers and people who are so willing to sacrifice, right? And to be leaders in this conscious push that we're all sort of along with, right?
Yeah. And it's cool to hear that list because they're all a part of it. You're spot on with that. And I don't have people on my podcast who can't show up with vulnerability, who can't open up the kimono and share some shit that's going to help people. One of the reasons, well, after I started the podcast, I started to realize it was really cathartic for me because like, look, man, I'm retired from trading at 41. Physically, I'm in great shape. I have a great family. I have a lot of things that maybe people aspire to. Now with that, people just assume your life is perfect. And I'm like honest, like I said, I open the kimono and people hear what they want to hear or see what they want to see on the outside. And the podcast gave me an opportunity to let people know, like, look, I got shit. And it's not like I'm looking for, sympathy, but it's also like, look, don't think because you have all these things that just life becomes easy. It's just not the case. And I wanted to, as you said, I wanted to give other people permission, whether they felt like they had it all, like I had it all, that it wasn't it. Like these things aren't it. And I'm going to tell you by sharing my experience with having all the things, many more things than I ever thought I could, kind of accumulate, and feeling so empty inside at the age of 45. And it's like, how the fuck did this happen? I played the game and I quote unquote won, and I'm empty. And just sharing that experience and bringing these people on to like bring their story in, but really like what can I learn in this podcast? How does this apply to me in the journey that I'm on? And then, where is that medicine for me? And then as I'm bringing that out, hopefully there's a lot for everybody else. And it's really what I tried to do with the podcast is, I would tell people it's taking, Parangi, a lot of my listeners would never know who he is. They would never hear his music, wouldn't understand all the magic that is, encapsulated in that man.
Magic. Yeah.
Right. And so for me, it's like, I wanted to take his medicine and make it bioavailable for my listeners who maybe identified more with my upbringing. And can I be the bridger of that? Can I bring these people on that my audience wouldn't otherwise listen to, and bring out some real nuggets and some real wisdom and learning and I think that's what's been so fun, as I've been able to really go deep with a lot of these people. And it's been, first and foremost, it's for me. Like, I'm in there, like, I want to know their story, but I want to dig deeper, and like, where are the nuggets for me to like really step into my full expression of who I'm meant to be. And really, each of these people are permission givers by the way they show up.
I love that.
And I'm really drawn to that authenticity, and to them bearing it all, and to being emotional on. I mean, like I cry in a lot of my podcasts, and I could sometimes I could probably stuff it down, but like, for what? Like this for me, and what I found is, as I've tapped into my heart, I never used to cry out of gratitude, but it's like the majority of my tears come from like sharing a story and just feeling so connected to the gift in it, and just overwhelmed with what a life I'm living. And it's not because of the things, it's because of the experiences and the people and the awakenings and the awareness and the unconsciousness that becomes conscious again. And it goes in that wave, and just like accepting all of it, to know that there are going to be days where I'm just not on my game, and I'm short with my wife, I'm short with my kids, and like, that's okay. It's part of this journey. So
thank you. You're making me cry too, man. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like you said something really beautiful there too, that I want to expand upon just a little bit, is like you're doing these things for yourself, right?
Yes.
No one else. No underlying theme or motivation or goal or intent, whatever kind of word you want to put in there. It's all, you're doing it for yourself. So if there's a overarching theme that I think is just sort of being presented right now in this moment, it's to do things that serve you, serve your highest and your best, without worrying about anything else other than that. Like, going into this podcast, there was no, like, I'm assuming there were no metrics you were trying to reach. There was no amount of listeners you were trying to reach. You were doing things just for yourself, to find out more about how you can live a better, more authentic expression of yourself. And that in and of itself, man, is like what I feel from you on a day-to-day basis, or whenever you put out a podcast. I'm waiting for one, so hurry up and put out another one, okay?
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, that's the energy I feel from you, and it's so electric. I can feel, when you were sharing that deep share right there, that electricity, that energy was going through my body as well. And Patrick, I'm sure it was going through yours too, man. It's like those type of shares and those type of brutal honesty, like good, bad, and different. Man, we need more of that in this life. So keep
Yeah, thanks. And that's really been my North Star. It's like, this is for me. Sure, I'm serving people by bringing these conversations, out into the podcast sphere, but it's really for me. And it, not that it hasn't been met with a bit of tension from, the guy who's been helping with. It's like, okay, we're like, you got to get more on Instagram. You got to do it's like, I don't fucking want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I'll do whatever I can do. And when I have something that I really want to share, I'll share it. It may be once every 3 months, and then I'll do like 3 in a week. But it's like, I just want to do what feels right. And as you said, those metrics, we can become so focused on trying to land on those things. The moment in the podcast, it's just like, I can't wait to sit down and have the conversation. And whatever happens. Sure, I'll do my research, I'll have my notes, but I almost never get to look at my notes because we start and we're rolling and we're just in it. We're in a moment and we're going to play. And it's really served me well. It's made the podcast continue to be fun because I don't care about anything else besides how I feel about the conversation. Like, that's it. I don't care if people love it or don't love it. That's just, it's made it so much easier. And it's back to what we were saying before with like, what makes you feel alive? And that makes me feel alive. Worrying about how many downloads and that doesn't make me feel alive. Someone else can do that. Now, within that, there's some nuance because I do want to have a greater impact because I think the conversations are important. I do want to serve more people, but how can we do it in a way that feels right for me? What can I do within the framework of that still feels authentic, and then continues to grow the podcast? And so that's actually, we're like in the process of that, and that feels good. But I'm not worried about it. There's no urgency to grow this thing and blow it up because my life feels awesome. And it's because I'm staying true to those things. And it's not because of anything that I have. I mean, some of that stuff makes things easier for sure. Don't get me wrong, but it's really, I do what I want within, the framework of my family as well. But there are times when I lose my way there, and it's just, okay, that's part of life. You get caught on a bit of this, I've just actually was on this great little bender, not like a party bender, but like this, things were flowing. And then yesterday I woke up, I had a 6 a.m. call and I had a late night before because we had someone's birthday party. And I was done. I was a zombie in the call. I was supposed to lead this workout at 8 o'clock. I called it off. Someone else led it. And I slept. And then I got up and I watched my wife play in this golf tournament. And I came back and I took a nap. And it's like my body just shut down. And for me, it was a little bit of a challenge to do that because there's so much energy in riding that flow. And I'd been in flow for a month. I don't know. I was feeling really good in that. Like, it was the hard stuff. I was like, bro, you need to rest, recover. And I did. And then last night we went out to a friend's for dinner and I just had no energy. And I was a little bit like, I wanted to show up a little bit differently, but I just didn't have it in the cards. And I woke up today and I feel awesome. So fortunately it was one day, but if it was more like, I need to be okay with that. That's part of when you're riding the wave, like ride the wave, have the, feel the flow. And when your body's telling you to rest. And that's back to what we were talking about with tuning into your body. And, don't feel like, listen, if you've got something to get done for work or you need to grind through that. But I don't think enough of us take enough time for ourselves when we are exhausted, when we are tired. We're looking around like, oh, he's still working out. Fuck all that. Like, what do you need in this moment? Advocate for yourself because you will be in a way better position when you come out of that rest and recovery. And maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe you feel super unproductive. That can be okay. Like, can you leave enough space for you to be able to do that? Get the shit done that you need to get done and just breathe.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Rolling back to this concept of the wave, because the wave is a metaphor that a lot of people use. I think it's one of my favorite metaphors when everything is going right for you, right? When everything feels in line, there's this universal wave behind you that is thrusting you forward into infinity, and you really can do no wrong. You really can feel no wrong. As you started to kind of lay out the path for you getting on the wave, it connected some dots for me. And I think there's a I don't know if it's unique or not, but there's definitely a societal pressure on all of us in a way. It may impact others more, and I think once you create a family, it certainly impacts you more. But there's a societal pressure to sacrifice, and I think while sacrifice, I think is a part of getting on the wave. If your sacrifices are pulling you away from living your authentic life, which I think is like when you said, hey, I'm doing the things that I want to do, or I do the things that I want to do. I have created a life where I do the things that I want to do. I think it's easy. You can take that, if you look at the world binary, right? You're like, oh, well, if someone's doing the things they want to do, they're a selfish asshole. That's an easy thing to like categorize, right? But the reality is, even within the most tightly knit family community, if you are constantly sacrificing, you are not going to be leading your family. You're not going to be leading your brotherhood. You're not going to be leading your community, because all you're doing is giving up the opportunities that are presented to you. So when you are looking at this idea of like, hey, what's on my plate, or what I want on my plate, and what people want on their plate, is there a guide rail? Is there some type of line of delineation where you step over into, I'm a selfish asshole, and I'm pursuing the things that fulfill my life, and by fulfilling my life, I create a better life for the people that I interact with on a daily basis?
Yeah, great question. And I think there's definitely nuance within that. And, back to, me living my black and white life, like when we could just be in the gray area of that. And when we reflect on whatever that decision is that we made, and it could be a selfish asshole, or it could be me just leading a purposeful life. If you can honestly just tune into like your intent behind it, the why behind why you did this, because you're right. When our cup is full because we're doing what we're meant to do, everybody wins. Yeah. There are times when you do need to show up for others and, sacrifice. Maybe I wanted to go play golf and my wife wants me to go on the boat today. Well, it'd be really fun to go play golf with the guys because of the group that's going, but we need that time together. Like, there's a time where I would have picked golf each time. It's like, that's more fun for me, but that's not me showing up as the best version of me. That's not me who wants to show up for my wife and my kids and to be that person. That's me chasing fun and not creating joy, in a sense. And almost, there was for so many years, I had some of this element of FOMO. And so that golf, I just almost couldn't miss it because I didn't want to miss the experience, where I finally realized, like, who fucking cares? We could have a blast, but when the round's over, I'm going to come back home, and that experience is a memory. It's gone. It has nothing to do with anything. And that was a really important distinction for me when I started to realize, when I said no to whatever these guys' weekends would be, I was going to be okay. Because on Monday, when I was back home, it was just a memory. It was like, it had no, it's almost like it didn't even happen because you're back in your life. But I was in a different place then. I was looking for external validation. I was chasing these things because I was unfulfilled. I didn't realize that it was my own work that I had to do. But as you were asking me that question, Patrick, one thing that came up for me was, I'd say probably October, November this past year, I finally just started showing up no matter where I was going as me. I started to realize that A, it's the easiest fucking thing to do. B, that's all anybody really wants. They don't want some projection. They don't want you to wear the mask about showing up how you. it became so much easier. And within that, I think is a bit of a thread here that when we show up as ourselves, when we do the things that make us feel alive, the energy that comes off of us that we bring into our field, into other people's field, they feel it. They don't even know what it is, but they'll say shit like, I just feel really good when I'm around you. I don't know what it is. And to me, you're not always going to get it right. I don't always get it right. Again, I step across, sometimes I do the selfish shit. Okay. That's always part of my work. But if I can continue to show up as me and not worry about who I'm around and provide that for them, it's just clean energy. And again, we speak with our energy and not with our words. And it's when we start to understand that, we all know when people are saying the right words and they're full of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Bro, I am not vibing with you right now. No. That was eloquent what you said, but you don't believe a goddamn word of it.
Exactly.
For someone else, you don't even know what you're having for a conversation, but you're at a party, there's nothing else going on. You are just so locked in, and it's beautiful. And time just goes by. And so like I invite everybody to think about that when you're interacting with people. Who are those people that you can't even put a finger on it? You just like being around them, not because they're always happy, because some of those people are full of shit too. They're hiding their own pain, right? But the people where you're like, I just always love seeing that person whenever we're out. And I don't even know what we talk about. I don't care. I just feel this energy that is amazing. And I think when we can get out of our head and try to figure shit out and just understand that there are some people that are showing up so authentically that we enjoy being around them. And that's a reminder to us that we can be doing the same thing and we'll have the same reception with those around us.
Yeah. The same way that authenticity is a magnetic force, inauthenticity is the opposite. It is repulsive, and we're really good at as humans of like identifying inauthenticity.
Sure.
And
yes,
we just don't always listen to it. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah,
it's hard not to listen to.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on, Patrick. Like it is repellent, and you're just like, I don't know what this is, because again, we're trying to sort it out. What is it? Is it that there's an inauthenticity here that feels shitty? Oh, when we understand that, we don't have to worry about the conversation, the words. It's like, there's just something here that we're not on the same vibe. And that's okay. Maybe someday we will be, but we aren't. And I'm going to choose to make my way to someone else that is going to energize me and make me feel the way I want to feel. But I think, again, we're not to harp on school again, but we're taught that there are these answers for everything. And there are these, it's logical and, I'm blanking on the word, but when we can understand that there are other forces at work here, we can be more accepting of what's happening. We can make sense of something without having to land on a particular answer. Again, can we just be curious? Like, why do I not vibe with this person? What's underneath? And then if we can start to get curious about that, we start to see that, oh, there's some real pain there maybe. Oh, okay. So then maybe instead of me thinking this guy's an asshole, I can start to have some empathy for him. And I can start to hold space for maybe there's something deeper here that we can talk about where it will help him bring it to the surface for himself. Whatever. There's just other ways we can do it versus fuck this guy. Because I've been like that. And sometimes I still am like, I can't stand this guy. What if I could, take a step back and be a source of this healing or bringing something up, not with being nosy, but just like shifting the conversation in a way. And maybe it's me leading with vulnerability, which I often do, and just to see where we can go with this. Because I don't love, as you guys are probably the same, the surface conversations, I've done that long enough. I'm good. I've had my fill. Like, let's get into some shit here. I want to know what makes you feel alive. I want to know what makes you feel repelled. Like, let's fucking go.
Let's go.
And I think that becomes exciting. We can be curious about those things. And we can, again, I think often we have to lead with being open and vulnerable and a share that they're like, oh, fuck, I can't believe you just told me that. But it's like, yeah, everything's okay here. This space is sacred and safe. And I think a lot of men in particular don't feel safe sharing these things. And, you know, back to what we were talking about earlier, that's why I feel like it's so important for men like us to share these things, to get them out of the shame cycle for other men, and to let them know that this is all okay. If we can share things on a podcast that anybody can listen to, like maybe we can have an intimate conversation where you can start to share these things. Maybe you can share it with one friend. Maybe you can share it with your partner. I don't know, but it's just by doing the thing rather than talking about the thing. Like I think that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's where there's real change and healing for all of us. Yeah. And that's, you know, there's people you mentioned earlier, I'd listen to all their podcasts. And so I know how they show up, and they gave me permission in my own life to do that. And then the podcast was an extension of that. You know, Kyle Kingsbury was a real big inspiration for me. When I decided to do the podcast, I really modeled it in a way after his. I'm like, I just want to talk about things that I'm super curious about, and I don't want to hide anything. Now, sure, there are some things that I won't share that my wife might not want me to share, but everything else is on the table.
Yeah.
You know, let's just get it out there and start to, you know, take the charge out of these things for people. And they can look at me and say, well, if he can do it, okay, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can do it in my own way. And so and you know, the more you do it, I fucking do it all the time now. I don't even think about it. I just like, we'll be playing golf, riding in the golf cart, and we'll be having some deep ass conversations. You know, it's fun. Like that to me is fun. You know, drinking a bunch of beers and playing golf, like not as much fun. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I feel you, man. Yeah. I got to say there's a deep respect for that ability to lead from out of your comfort zone and lead with your energy and not your words. That's huge. That really stood out to me over the last few things that you said. I got one more question for you before we let you go. I know we're over that hour, but yeah. So as you've moved into your piece of the unlearning and how far you've moved into today and where you are in this very moment, what has been an unexpected sacrifice of your journey? Something that you never expected that you were going to sacrifice. I think that's important because we talked about sacrificing a lot today. I just want to hone in that just a little bit more to get a little bit more background.
That's a great question. What have I had to sacrifice?
Or unexpected, yeah, whatever way you want to look at it.
I had to be okay letting some relationships either go or be put on ice, or to allow space for them to be on their own journey. You know, I think when I started to have my awakening around a lot of these things, it was hard because I felt like, with the exception of some in the Austin community that were really helping me through this, my kind of other relationships, the guys I traded with in Chicago, and these they weren't going on the same journey. They weren't having the same experience. They were concerned. They were afraid that I was doing drugs when I was doing, you know, having a ceremony with psilocybin. They, you know, it came from a good place, but I had to not, like, there's a difference between like sharing what's going on and then trying to defend and explain what's going on. And I think I, for so long, had been in the mindset of there's not necessarily a right way, wrong way, but it's, you have to defend your thing. You have to, like, I'm doing this and I have to make sure I defend it so everybody is okay with it. It's like letting go of, like, everybody's not going to be okay with it. And that doesn't matter. Like, it took me a long time to finally not care what anybody else thinks. Now, in the process, I had to convince myself that I didn't care what anybody thought, but I still did. But I felt like the more I did that, and then as I started to really feel into how that was not serving me to care about what other people thought, I was able to really let go of that. And so I'd say, like, largely, now listen, these relationships have grown immensely since I've let go of that. I've just gone on my journey, and they've been super curious. Now they've been curious because I'm showing up differently. And now they're taking some bits and pieces of what I've experienced, and they're experiencing it for themselves. But it's really like letting go of having to convince people that what you're doing is good, right? Any of that stuff. If you tune in and you know this is right for you, then that's really, you know, for me, that's, and really tune in, right? Like, not just a flip it, like, fuck it, this is what I want to do. But, you know, people start to read that energy too. And you're not trying to convince them to come down the same road as you. You're letting them have their own journey, just like I'm, you know, trying to allow my kids to have their own journey. But it's really just walking your path and letting everybody do their own thing. And maybe you're able to inspire them in some ways. Awesome. But it's got to be your path. It's got to be my path that I'm walking in integrity. And the more I do that, the relationships that are meant to be will be there. And I don't, you know, I don't worry about any of that anymore. You know, I try to be present with where I am, who I'm around, and I don't stress if I haven't heard from somebody. I don't fucking care about any of that. Like, what's going on right now, and just to be in that moment.
Beautiful.
That was a fucking hard question, by the way. Dude, we're not going to be able to answer this.
Well, you pulled it out, man. It's perfect. It's perfect, Cal.
Let me hit you with possibly two final ones. One, do you have a meditative practice?
Honestly, just what I was saying earlier, in the morning, I'll get up, I'll get some water, and I'll do some hape.
Okay.
And then if I'm not doing hape, I actually started this is actually, I would call it a gateway to hape for people. It's less intense, but it actually has a little hape in it. It's called, I actually have it right here. It's called Meditation Mist, and it's by Mito Zen. It's Meditation Mist. It's like the extra strength stuff. It's got peppermint and eucalyptus essential oil. It has a little bit of hape in it, and it has oxytocin. And it's something where you give, you know, squirt in each nostril, and you just sit with it. And so it's, like I said, it's less intense than hape, but it grounds me, and it just allows me to just be with whatever I need to be with. Yeah. And I don't get too structured with my meditation. It's like I either hit the hape or I hit the meditation mist, and I just let what happens happen. Okay.
So here's where what I think is interesting, because you know, I could observe your physical practice, right? I could watch you at the hape. I could watch a shaman blow hape up your nostrils, and that physical practice is very observable for me. But what's not observable is what goes on within you within that moment. So even if the pathway there is hape, or whatever the meditation mist, whatever the magical tool that you use to get into this space. Once you find your space, can you give me just a little description of what that moment or those moments are like within you?
Yeah, it's an intense body sensation, especially with the hape. And so there's pairing it with the breath. And what's interesting for any of you who have either done Hape or are going to do it, when you breathe in through the mouth and out through the mouth with Hape, after about the third breath, like my body is on fire. It is buzzing. It completely activates it in the body. And so if I'm not feeling like going there, and I would say more often than not, I don't. And that's something, now that I say that, it's something for me to sit with, because what am I afraid of happening there? Because it does become uncomfortable. But I've had some of my kind of greatest awarenesses within that. But breathing in again through the mouth and out through the mouth, and just laying there and allowing my body to just feel all of that. Because I think for me, there's just not a lot of other practices I do where I just totally feel my body and tune in. And so it allows me to do that. And then generally I'm laying down. Sometimes I try to put my hands up on my side with my hands open. Sometimes one's on my heart and one's on my gut. And I try to be with whatever is coming up for me, really just allow space for that. So I don't know, Patrick, if that's a little bit more in depth for you, or if
That's wonderful.
You want me to go a little deeper? Yeah.
You can always go deeper. I always enjoy depth.
You have permission. That's right.
So let me just give like one more tweak. So when something arises, whatever it is, and it doesn't really matter what it is, right? But something bubbles up from the subconscious, and it is now the thing that is the primary resident within your brain space. And you're in this mode of quietness or stillness or meditation, however it's defined for you. Is there an observation of this new thing that has taken residency within your thoughts? Or is there okay, that's a thing, let that drift on and see what bubbles up from the subconscious next?
Generally, I sit with the thing. Yeah, because for me, it's come up for a reason. What is this? There was an example I've given before back in December. I did a pretty good whack of Hape, and I had an awareness around this childhood sexual trauma that I knew about, but I had not thought about it. And the important part was I connected that to how I had viewed women and how less sensual, more sexual, so at a very young age, I felt like I had this split, and it wasn't the type of thing where I was feeling like a victim and there was a perpetrator. It was like, okay, someone was trying to teach me about the birds and the bees, but he was wounded, and the way he said it, and giving me pornography at a very young age, and he was doing the best he could, so I was able to actually witness all that and not feel like I had been wronged.
Yeah.
And was also able to see that thread go all the way back to that point and understand that if I can heal that, then, my view can, I can tap into more of that sensual nature. And I felt like on the spot, I was able to turn things, and there's still integration that needed to happen after that. But that was a moment that came up, and it was like, holy fucking shit. I had no idea how much of an impact that had on me. Yeah. And then just to sit with that and to be able to work with that and largely heal it in that moment felt really good.
Wow.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, for all of those authentic kind of windows into your world, and for being you, man.
Yeah. Patrick, Brian, this was awesome. Really enjoyed this. Thanks for having me on and allowing me to share a little bit of my journey. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you, man, deeply. Thank you, Cal.
Sure. Thank you.
Awesome.
Sending you love, man. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
All right.
Thanks,
appreciate it, fellas.
Thanks, man. Have a great rest of the day.